And we're live.
All right. Welcome to another episode of Blog Talk, the show we know that you're raving about. I'm trying to remember my name. I'm Link.
I'm Quick. I'm Quick.
I'm Lee. I'm Remix.
All right. And don't blog like my brother, blog like my sister.
Blog like my sister.
All right, so we got a smooth operating garage here. Let me just try to tell you what's going on. Of course, this is for DML Commons, which is a new online community where people are going to be blogging about and engaging in some community activity around their research in the two strands that are on the site at dmlcommons.net. This first 2-week series is meant to get people started, perhaps for people who haven't blogged before. A lot of people are dusting off some old blogging bits, and so they're saying, wow, I haven't written a blog in a while. And so we wanted to give people a chance to get their blog set up, connect it to the site, and do some practice. So last week, let me apologize on behalf of the Blog Talk Enterprise because there's a little bit problem with management. Our director, Joaquin, walking around sleeping, completely forgot the fact that there are so many talented women out there who are probably better mechanics than Click and Embed and I. So we wanted to remedy that situation, and we want to invite in to join us our new blog sisters, Tag, Remix, and Connect. And since the guys got a chance to talk a little bit last week and kind of fill the hour with their hot air, I just wanted to ask our new blog sisters maybe just to give us a short intro, whatever you want to say, and talk about why you see blogging, which is kind of why are we still talking about blogging like 30 years after it was invented as something that's important, especially for academics. So I will ask Sister Remix first, since she's the first icon I see.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura, a.k.a. Remix, as of yesterday. I work for Mozilla, and in the Mozilla universe, everybody blogs. And everybody blogs because we work in an open fashion, which basically means that when we're blogging, we're sharing our ideas and our thoughts that are not perfect and not finished, and just kind of working through whatever problems we're addressing out there in the open all over the web. And the reason that we do that is because there's so many people that are working in open source. It's really important to publish in the open so that people who are interested in your open source project can get involved in some form or fashion and find the history. So I've been blogging for a really long time. And I think I've said a lot of really stupid stuff on my blog, but that's okay because in my world, sharing early and often is just sort of a state of being.
Awesome. And I mean, who knows more about mechanical stuff than people at Mozilla who are just doing such great work in this area? So let's turn over to Sister Tag. Lee? Unmute.
I keep losing my mouse. That's how technical I am. I like to joke that I was blogging before it was called blogging. A friend of mine started a BBS, which he turned into a Yahoo newsletter, like a zine, and asked me to contribute to it, which he eventually turned into a website, which doesn't even exist anymore because we didn't pay the domain fees quick enough back in '99, I guess. So I've been doing writing on the web since the mid-'90s, and I took a break because I was told that I wouldn't be taken seriously as a scholar if I blogged, and then came back to it when I was looking for community and support and a whole bunch of other good stuff when it came to teaching and education. And so I think it's still this really rich source of support and a means to connect and have more long-form thinking and again, working out loud, thinking out loud, getting it out there, getting feedback as early as possible, and really just, again, getting that community together and being able to do that and connect and have opportunities to do things like this.
That's great, and thank you so much. And really, I want to thank Lee. She was the first one who kind of said, "Hey, what's with the three dudes?" Although she didn't say it like that. But then she actually, what I really liked is she actually DM'd me. She said, like, "Wait a minute, I'm not really accusing you, and I understand." So so it kind of took it away from this kind of back and forth kind of name calling about gender, etc. And let's do something about it.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead.
Well, and I was just going to say, I'll admit honestly that I looked at that, and I know everyone who's on the panel, and I follow everyone on Twitter, and I'm a voracious reader of everyone's blogs, and so it was sort of like I respect all of the people who are on the panel, but at the same time, and again, it's one of those things in the social media feed of it had just been in my feed the other day about the gender and racial makeup of panelists at conferences and those kinds of things, and can you play bingo with that? So it was like I need to point it out, and I was hoping something productive would come of it, and that's one of the downsides of Twitter is sometimes tone can get lost, but certainly my idea was to be generous in this and to say particularly the gender nature of blogs, because it is seen in a lot of cases as a sort of feminine work, but important feminine work in that sort of way. So anyways.
That's great. I'd rather be feminine then. I know, hopefully Maha's got her mic working, so our from the other side of the world, we have Maha Bali. Sister Connect, I made you Sister Connect.
I like that. So what question am I answering? Am I introducing myself? Or?
Yeah, an introduction and why this stuff is important and whatever you feel like saying to the world.
Okay. All right. Now you can tell I'm in my room. So she's going to keep popping in and out of this hangout. So I'm Maha Bali. I'm an associate professor of practice at the American University in Cairo. Hoda, can you please play with something else? Yeah. And I only started blogging a little bit over a year ago. So I haven't been blogging for a long time, but I blog a heck of a lot. And I've known about blogging since maybe 2003, but I didn't get the confidence to actually go on blog until after I finished my PhD. So I know it's difficult to blog, and it takes a while to believe that people will read you or that they're interested in what you have to say. And what helped me a lot is blogging during MOOCs where you have an audience who will listen to you and comment and retweet you and things like that. And that's I think mainly the kind of people who read my stuff. And I'm going to stop now and see what my daughter needs, and I'll be listening in, okay?
And that's great that you're doing it from home. Maha's a champion, like for someone who just started blogging a year ago. She is just so profound in the amount of sharing that she does. And what she also does really well, and maybe we'll start there with some discussion. The idea I thought for this show was, that people who might want to volunteer their blogs to drive it into the garage, and we've got all our mechanical experts here, and we could talk about what we see in their sites. So I will check the Twitter when someone else is talking, but we also have a list of blogs that people have already submitted to the site. So I thought we would just eventually bring them up to show, but a little bit of discussion first, because it did come up, I think, yesterday. People started talking about the value of commenting, and we all know commenting is important. And back, I know when Jim and Laura and Lee and I started, commenting was the thing because there wasn't anything else. There wasn't other places that you went besides listservs to have this discussion. And the blog discussion is what made it really dynamic. And for many people, this is kind of withered in a way. It depends how you look at it. But we know who've taught these connected courses that when you do this, especially when you're onboarding people, like just finding out that someone else you don't know is reading your blog is really important. And so the DS-106 lessons I know I learned is get out there early and try to comment a lot, and not just say like, I like your blog or nice theme, but to actually add something constructive. And I can't think of anybody who does this more genuinely than Jim. The amount of commenting that he's able to do that's actually responding to what people write is really inspirational. So how do we encourage it without, besides the fact that we try to do it, and how do we get people to understand the value of commenting?
I think if you blog, mean, I'll just take a quick step. If you blog and then someone comments on your post, I think immediately, forever, you know the value of commenting, because there is nothing more awesome than getting a comment on your post, unless, of course, it's a terrible comment, but that's also part of the game. But I just, when students are starting out in DS 106, or whatever course I'd be teaching using blogs, immediately if I get in there and start commenting, let them know I'm reading, and then encourage them, I just find it's the best of online pedagogy in terms of just providing what you can provide in a face-to-face class in the comments. And I think you could do that in many places. You said this a lot, the idea of you blog where you are. You blog in Flickr, you blog in Twitter, you comment where you are, and more I think students have become comfortable with kind of commenting also in Twitter, so that I'm not making that sharp distinction between blog comments and Twitter comments. So that's kind of been an evolution I've been going through personally, but I'll throw it out to other people.
You know, I want to add.
One. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Please use the chat to queue.
Are we cool?
I just want to say that I really love comments, and I really love group discussions. And one day I want to be, they call them in Italy, they call them vigiles. They're the people who sit in the middle of a traffic circle and try and let everybody know. And when you have 6 people on a hangout, you need what they call in Italy a vigile. Someone who's like, you go, you go, you go, you go, you shut up. You get off the bloggers.
I'm glad someone's doing it because I'm not paying attention. So we're gonna Maha, Howard, and then Laura are gonna talk about commenting. We're gonna comment about commenting to be meta.
Yes, me first. Okay. So I was just going to talk about, the thing is, I mean, there's one thing to notice. Like when I first started blogging, I noticed that my blogs were getting read. So I was promoting them on Facebook and Twitter and so on, but not getting comments there. I was getting comments on Facebook rather than on my blog. And I was fine with that until I started finding people commenting on my blog. But the thing is, when people say we're not getting comments on our blog, does that mean that they think their blog isn't getting read? Or so is it a problem of not promoting their blog enough, or not putting it somewhere visible, or putting it on the right hashtag or in the right Facebook or Google Plus group? Or is it that actually people are reading it but not commenting? So one of the things I was saying is that sometimes to encourage people to comment, you would have like a question at the end of a blog post that would sort of encourage people to give their input on something. I do that sometimes. Or I write something that's controversial that some people want to say, well, no, I don't agree with you. So.
Just a quick response to that, Maha, because I struggle with that a bit too. One of the things I find I do a lot is I link to other people's posts. And there's that notion of track backing and linking that I think really goes a long way towards encouraging a conversation, whether it be in the comments or on blogs, that are real and viable. So that's something I try and really kind of embed in my own work and also in the work of students who are kind of in a class, etc.
You know, I wanted to add that if your intention using blogs pedagogically is to encourage a co-learning community, there's nothing like getting in there and giving thoughtful responses to your students' first blog posts. And by that I mean reading a blog post and responding to any kind of invitation that they may have, but also usually you as the instructor know more than the student. There may well be some things you can point them to that may not be in the syllabus, but are something that you think they would be interested in from what they have to say. And in general, what I say about blogging and commenting in this regard to students is that this is a way to explore the difference between the audience that the non-interactive world has, the world of the people you see on television, and the world of the public, and the many publics that are online, the emerging world. A public, those are people who not just read what you say and watch your videos, but they can link to them, they can comment, they can disagree with you, they could join you in some kind of collective action. It's a much more active conversation. There are people who could actually someday, presumably in a nice way, show up at your doorstep. So I think who you have in mind when you're blogging and when you're commenting is really important. And if you want comments, you can invite them by asking questions or proposing some kind of provocative statement and inviting opinions on it. Once you get the ball rolling, then it becomes interesting.
I think I'll underline this idea of leading by example when you're blogging. So I, for example, really feel a sense of responsibility to people who comment on my work. I get a lot of good ideas from them. I ask them to give me feedback. I'm publishing things that, you know, I've been thinking about for some amount of time and just really needs to continue the conversation and build a community around an idea. And that sort of sense of responsibility leads me to read other people's work and leads me to comment on other people's work. And because I do that, I feel like it facilitates the conversation in a way that allows what we in the Mozilla universe call newbies to sort of have the agency that you need when you're sort of first starting to interact in an online environment. So I think that leading by example is kind of important when it comes to blogging, because if you're only blogging so that somebody comments on your blog, then you're doing your work a disservice.
I think having used, I really liked what Howard said about you know, modeling that, what you said about modeling it, but also to really engage the students, and nothing gets them more jazzed. And it's interesting because sometimes they don't know what to do with it because they're not used to people reacting to their writing and their ideas in a constructive and almost on equal footing. Yes, we know more than they do, but we're approaching them with an openness and an honesty and a willingness to say, let's have a conversation around it, which is sometimes, again, really foreign to the students. So sometimes they'd come back to me after I'd give a really thoughtful feedback, and they'd come back and they wouldn't say anything, and they'd come and see me in class, and I'd say, why didn't you respond? They said, I thought you wrote that much because I did something wrong. Right? That there was something wrong with my post, and that's why you put so many comments there. I thought it's like, no, this is a conversation, and so sometimes it's hard for them to get the idea of the commons and to get the idea of how to respond thoughtfully and invoke those kinds of conversations, because they've just never engaged in it beyond like a like or I agree with you, or something like that. So modeling is so important in terms of a learning tool, and then showing them, like, here's how you can expand the conversations through different channels, through different means, in really productive ways.
Thanks a lot for that, Lee, or Tag. Yeah, and I put a link into the Twitter. I've written some things that I've tried to do when setting up DS106 students on constructive commenting, and it's a little bit of an open-ended thing. People have to find their commenting style, but you should add something to what someone wrote, and so that could either be like resources, it could be a suggestion, it can be a disagree, or it can be, in a way, I do like what you said because. And sometimes I know a structure really helps in creating, I call it the sandwich, where like you start off with something like, well, I really like what you said because blah, 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 blah. And then you insert, but I don't really agree with blah, 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 blah because yabbity, yabbity, yeah, and then close with something nice. That kind of works. I can't say I always do that, but kind of thinking about what you give back. And when I've asked my students to start commenting, I ask them to, the last thing I want to do is like count how many comments people do. I think that's really cheap. So I try to ask them, as they're going about looking at other people's blogs, what do they see in other people's blogs that they see as valuable that they can bring back to their own work? So it's not only a way of just giving feedback, it's kind of you're out there scouting a little bit, like, wow, I really like what Lee does with her sidebar, or I want to borrow that theme, or I like the way she does long posts and then short posts. So there's some stylistic things and mechanical type things that you can learn from other people's blog style. So I think we're going to switch now to talk to some of the questions that come in. Anna Kuhn, I hope I said that right, asked a really good question about when you're blogging, this thing, how do you choose what I need to blog about and when? And so that's the whole thing about what to blog about. I just commented on someone's blog in the DML comments this morning, and they said the typical thing like, oh, I don't have anything interesting to say. So that's the kind of thing where there's like an expectation, like we have to be profound. And I find I'm always looking around in the world for things that connect to what I'm thinking about. And so I said, I was just outside this morning and I saw 5 banana slugs, and I'm thinking there's something about banana slugs that I can use as a metaphor. So there's a lot of things like looking beyond the scope of our work. It's not only just the stuff we're reading about, it's our day-to-day interaction. Maha writes a lot of things that come out of her role as being a mom and things that she goes about in raising her child and dealing with some of those issues. And so there's so many things that go on in our lives that don't have to be separate from the academic work that we do. And it's not like blogging, again, people say, do I do personal or professional stuff? You do whatever you want. It's your blog. You find some mix that's balanced. I generally like it when I read a blog, when I can get a sense that there's a personality there, that someone does interject things that reflect who they are, and it's not necessarily trying to sound like talking about themselves in the third person. I think Laura wanted to comment on this, and then Lee had something to comment on what to blog about and when.
Yeah, I would say that, one of the things that I do in order to find ideas is I just reflect on my own life. I wouldn't write about slugs maybe because they're gross and I like to cut them in half, but I definitely use my blog as a place to explore ideas. So if there's something that you're sort of tinkering around with in your head and you're not sure where to go with it, that is a perfect idea for a blog post because other people can get involved. They can kind of use that as a prompt to really respond to something that you're thinking about. And I think that Alan is right. There's ideas all over the place. And as far as when, like I said in my intro, early and often, the more you can share what you're thinking about, then the more opportunity you give to other people to sort of respond to that. And I think that conversation is really valuable in this space. Yes, I'm a slug cutter, Alan.
Did you want to jump in, Lee?
Yeah, I was also thinking that there's never also a bad time to write about something, because one thing that I've been struggling with is that, like with blogs, sometimes people feel a pressure to be timely, right? Well, I have to write about this while it's in the cycle or in the air or all of these kinds of things in order to be timely and be a part of that conversation or inject myself into it or give my 2 cents. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but also to remember that these issues, particularly if they're hot topics around education or politics or these things that are going on, they never really go away. We might have turned another way, or the cameras may have turned off or turned the other way, but that doesn't mean it's gone away. And so just because something has been was a hot topic a month ago or 2 months ago or 6 months ago, but it still nags at you and you're still trying to deal with it and read and process, that it's still relevant and you can still go through that. And blogging, I think, is a space that we can say, no one else is talking about this anymore, and I think that that's a disservice, and I want to bring this back, and I think that we need to keep having this really difficult conversation rather than just following the never-ending news cycle or research cycle or whatever it is towards its inevitable turn away from everything. So it's whenever you want, whatever you want, and that if there is something that's nagging you or keeping at you or you want to go back to it, that's the place or the space to do it, even if you think, oh, no one's talking about this anymore or no one's interested in this anymore. No, people are. They just, they need some incentive to get that conversation going again, and you could be that person.
On that.
Can I just jump in here? Sorry.
Please. No, go right ahead, Maha.
Okay. Because I tweeted earlier that if I read more and blogged less, I'd forget most of the stuff I've read. So I actually blog to keep the thoughts that are rushing through my head all the time. And when I read a lot of things, instead of taking notes and then losing them like I used to do while I was doing my PhD, and then I'd have to go look for them when I wanted to write something, I just write it right away. And I found, when I do that, it helps curate what's going on in the internet for other people, so it's useful for other people and not just for myself. And it's also useful if it's someone else's writing and blogging to let them know I'm recognizing what they're doing. And I was thinking it's even more of a way of showing someone you appreciate what they're doing. And something I think Jim was saying earlier, it's not just commenting on someone's blog, but actually linking to their blog on yours and then extending that conversation to let them know that what they've said is valuable. And it helps me think, and thinking publicly means that other people are going to respond to it too. So it used to be, just before I started blogging, I used to send my colleagues on our mailing list from my department long emails with a lot of reflections, and they were going crazy. They were like, we can't handle this. This is too much reflection for us. But if I post it online, different people will read it each time, different people will benefit, and more people will benefit than just the people in my department. So that's the other thing. It's just like more people can benefit from what you're doing if you're writing.
Yeah, and that's Maha, she has a style where she's thinking about something. It may not even be, and I'm filling in her words, but I know for me, like, it may not even be fully formed. Like, I know there's something of a seed that I want to start writing about, and often the point doesn't emerge for me until I start writing. I know other people, they will draft and revise and revise and revise, and that's fine too. Find the pattern that works for you, but also maybe experiment sometimes. So it's good to mix up your patterns in terms of this. And there's no rules, and the whole thing is developing kind of a style that works for you. And like, for me, I don't really write with expectation of a response. So if I'm not getting comments, it's not like I think anything wrong. Comments are a bonus, and they're nice about it. But it's all about me, to be honest, and not in the ego sense, but it helps me remember. And I think what some other people were saying, the idea that the writing about it kind of reifies or reiterates something you're thinking about, and it's kind of a different way. Like, we have all this stuff floating in our head, we might talk to people, but when you write it, it's kind of a third sort of way of revisiting an idea. And so some of that may flow into, I'm losing track of who's going to talk next, but we have a question from Empathetics. Boy, isn't that a great Twitter name? Empathetic, I like that one. How should we be thinking about people's blogs and blog moving forward within these strands? And I'm not exactly sure of the context thing about like where these blogs go, especially if people are new. The thing is, like, it begins like you're kind of feeling your way around here, and maybe you are waiting to see what the response is. So I think maybe it's a matter of, in the beginning, trying to figure out what kind of things work for you, both content-wise and timing-wise, because this is something that you're going to divert from watching. So some people ask me how do I have time to blog. Is I don't watch TV. So while everybody's watching TV, I'm blogging, and that's my choice about how I do things. But the way things might evolve would be that, actually I don't really worry about how things are evolve, because your blog, even over 4 weeks, your blog is still a baby, especially if you're just starting. I mean, I'm still, kind of feeling out my way after 10 or 11 years, and I think it should always be a continual growth pattern. So I think as you write, hopefully you'll figure out what feels comfortable and what feels valuable in terms of a response. So let's say, I think Howard is next, if I'm right, following the traffic direction.
I also wanted to jump in on Empathetic's question there, because this is particularly in the context of a new community forming around the DML Commons. And sometimes you may not want to think aloud or reflect on a particular point, but you can do a great service to the emergence of the co-learning community if you read what the other bloggers are saying. And maybe you can see a kind of a common theme emerging. If you link to 2 or 3 of those other blogs that are saying something, and then essentially do what has been called weaving, by saying, person A has said this about the text, and isn't it interesting? Person B has said that about the text, and I think that we're seeing that there are 2 or 3 points of view which I would characterize as. I mean, I'm just taking one kind of example of how you can make a kind of connective post that leads people back to the other blogs and their posts. So there's not really one way to do it. In fact, I think of it as a toolkit, and some days you want to pick up the I'm going to reflect on the text toolkit and tool, and some days you may want to pick up the I'm just going to think aloud about the ideas that we're talking about this week, and some days you may not have that kind of motivation. Maybe you want to just take a look around and see what other people are saying and see if you can kind of weave it together, build on it. I think that, to me, kind of the meta goal is to have a conversation that emerges from all the different blogs that's more than the sum of the individual parts. It's not just a bunch of individuals giving book reports. We are all trying to take little pieces of our understanding and put them together with each other.
Awesome. Howard was directing traffic before, and now he's talking, so that means I'm supposed to be directing traffic. I do want to add in, I know the thing that comes up quite often, and of course, everybody here in the garage has been doing this. You know, even though Maha says a year, she has like 10 years of experience in that year, and has sort of found that comfort zone. But the usual thing that comes up, and probably for the people coming into DML Commons who are part of the 2 pathways, there's this thing about like, I don't want to put out something that's not perfect or that somebody might find criticism with. It's kind of this fear of looking bad, which is a real fear. Like, who wants to look like non-professional or put up something that's going to be really ridiculed and chewed to bits? So sometimes there's this reluctance to say, like, what happens if I put up something that's not really finished or incomplete? Everybody here has found that comfort zone, I think, with the idea about, to me, the problem is not like putting out something bad. It's like, yeah, put out something bad, but you had the chance to sort of like revise it and go back and recorrect it. So, but that's because I sort of found that comfort zone. Anybody want to jump in with sort of the idea about how you help people who are new to this? Because it's easy to forget what that's like, and actually the whole sphere has changed because things are so much more visible than they used to be. You know, when Jim and I started, there were maybe 3 other people out there who were reading blogs, so it wasn't like you're out there like in this big shiny spotlight, and maybe it's not a shiny spotlight, but there is this aspect of public performance, if you will. I think Sister Tag raised her wrench.
I wish I had a wrench. I think one of the things though is that, oh, you do. I think one of the things that's important, though, is you can put things out that are incomplete, that are unfinished, that are imperfect, but if you're transparent about that you're not presenting it as something that is perfect and finished and done with, then there's a real openness to that sort of honesty and that sort of transparency, and say, this is a draft, these are my preliminary thoughts, this is part X of maybe an infinite number of posts where my thinking on this topic is going to evolve, or I'm looking for feedback, or this is where I am right now versus where I was last year versus where, who knows. So I think encouraging that sort of openness, but it can be really, really difficult. You're right. It's like sharing drafts, you know, and you can if you can show in particular how blogging and this kind of writing out loud, writing in public, has improved your thinking and improved your writing, that can be really powerful as well. It's like, look, read this, and then read this 5 years later. See how my thinking's improved, hopefully, how the writing is improved, hopefully, and this is all from a lot of really valuable feedback in that sort of sense. And it's always, you know, my persona that I've sort of adopted is one of utmost transparency, right? Like, go read my Twitter feed, right? There's no there's no secrets or sort of hiding there in that sort of sense, where I kind of wear my imperfection as that part of the identity. And I know that's not easy for a lot of people, but I think that we can also model bravery and courage, and also be supportive for that sort of thing and understand where people are coming from and being nurturing. Nurturing, that's what I'm looking for, nurturing and supportive of that sort of stuff.
I think to build on Lee's point, I have developed a persona of utmost volatility. So unlike transparency, but I think one of the to really kind of I reflected on what you're saying just recently. So I have been blogging almost regularly in the same space for 10 years now, which is cool, right? Like I haven't been doing anything for 10 years, save been raising kids. So it's the same like moment. But the thing is I realized that there's an arc to the work I've been doing for the 10 years that I know about in my head, right? Like I know the arc of my own work. But I now have this crazy archive where I can point people to that particular moments in that arc to kind of help me remember some of the things I didn't have the fine details on. But also it seems like that arc is more crystal than any work I've done before because I've been regularly writing about it. And I think that balance between writing for yourself to manage, and Darcy Norman always called it his external hard drive, like he with his external brain, right? Like all of that stuff was in this blog that he would do it. And when I first came to it, I was really going and reading in order to understand how to do very specific things. So it was very practical, and I find on my blog, people come at certain points for posts I've done 8 years ago for a very specific practical thing. And I love that it's not any one thing. And so when you're thinking, like, who's my audience? Like, who am I writing for? I don't think you'll know that. So try and write the things you're interested in and that get you going. And I imagine, like the web always does, there'll be 5,000 other people who will be interested in that thing because it's so crazy, right? So, I mean, I think don't worry about what your audience is. Like you'll see that over time. I think the 3 people who are reading mine and Alan's blog maybe 10 years ago are the 3 people and only 3 people who are still reading it. And that's all right, right? Because those are the 3 right people. And if you hit something that other people are interested in, you'll know. So that's the audience question is a really, for me, challenging one because you would hate to think I'm writing for an audience only, and then if that audience doesn't materialize or you don't feel like that's your audience, then you stop blogging. I mean, I think there's got to be a reason to blog, even above and beyond the readership and connection, which I do think is crucial, but I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. And I have to say, and then I'm going to let Lisa chime in, that if any person embodies the idea of a blogging and a person having personality, it's Jim Groom. And I've had a chance to work with Jim, and people, they will line up to be smack talked by Jim because he makes it a great experience. The thing I have to say is, like, when I taught with Jim, it's like I can't teach like Jim Groom, and it's a mistake to be like Jim Groom. We have to be who we are, and that happens too in the writing space. And I know exactly what Darcy was talking about is Cory Doctorow, 2002, my blog, my outboard brain, and it's always made sense to me as a way of that's how I see my blog. That doesn't always work for everybody else, but we have to find that space. So I think it's going to be Lee and then Howard.
I'll figure out how to unmute this one of these times. I think you're right, Jim, in talking about like not to worry about audience, because one of the most and I've heard this a lot, and it happened to me, is as soon as you become really aware of your audience, it changes your writing, right? And I switched platforms, so I went from having my own personal blog to a much larger platform, and that shift was all of a sudden really difficult, and I couldn't write anymore because I was all of a sudden, all I was thinking about was my audience. Oh gosh, it's this big audience, and and it's different, and it's not just my people anymore. It's other people are going to be reading it, and I also have this responsibility to the editors who have selected me to be in this space, and I'd forgotten who I was and why I was blogging and what I was doing, and until I had to write my way through that, but until I kind of came to terms with, no, this is still my blog, this is still my space, I still have to write what I want to write, in the way I want to write it. It got really difficult, and so that might be some advice too for people just starting out, is that don't let gaining an audience and a following trip you up. You know, it can help you evolve, but don't let it just like be the thing that's driving you to write anymore. If you're not doing it for yourself primarily, then you know it's not really going to work that well, and you're going to struggle to find things to talk about because you're thinking about what do they want me to say versus, well, what do I want to say? So that's important, I think.
Other in bed?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump back and zoom back a little bit and look at a bit of the bigger picture of all the people that we are encouraging to blog around learning and co-learning and teaching. There are a number of narratives in the popular discussion these days about the so-called future of education. And I think, in my opinion, I think probably in all of our opinions, some of these just miss the mark so much. There's all of the hyperbole about MOOCs and all of the problems with educational institutions and all of the tensions caused about using social media. And at the same time, in the online world, we have all kinds of people using kind of walled gardens, useful walled gardens, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. They all have their place, but really, I think if you want to see the future of learning right now, tune into the conversations that people are having on their blogs and in their comments around a hashtag. I got sucked into this whole thing by wondering, what is this DS106 hashtag that's popping up on Twitter? And it's a rabbit hole. It brings you into another world. And that other world does not consist of some professor, well, maybe a little bit of Jim Groom as a bit of a star. It's mostly about the commentary and the cross conversation in the comments and the blogs linking to each other. The grand idea of this, let's build these Udacities and edXs and gigantic top-down platforms that are going to use media to be the future of the university. They have their use, but that's really a form of the enclosure of the commons. And if you really want to keep something as exciting as the web itself has been, jump into it and blog yourself and comment yourself and link yourself. It's, the web was not created by Harvard, and it wasn't created by ABC, and it wasn't created by the United States. It was created by a bunch of people who put up pictures of their dogs and linked to each other. And well, we really shouldn't lose track of that communal building as we're using these tools, these small pieces loosely joined, to talk about subjects that are germane to education and to research. I know that many of the young researchers in DML Commons, they're kind of fearfully looking backwards at the past in which you have to perform in a certain way, you have to publish in your peer-reviewed journal, and if you step out of that, you're at risk. I think in the future you're going to be at risk if you don't learn how to participate in this overall conversation, in addition to the legally, traditionally sanctioned publication you're doing.
Excellent. And in a way, all the stuff that happens where, X is dead or blank is broken, it's just totally ridiculous because there's no way that everybody can see it all. I go on the internet every day, and I find more things that I don't know about or I've never seen before. And it's the closest thing to a fabulously infinite space. It's the Alexandria Library to the nth degree. And there's no way you can take it all in. And that's why what happens is, that's the whole idea of the network approach, is that you want to be in the range of other people who are helping find that stuff and signal it to you. And that's the premise of the DML Commons. Jeffrey Kiefer, who I know wants to drive his blog into the garage, but he did ask a question, and it's something that does come up, blogging was this thing that happened, it's what my parents did. It was in 2002 when the internet was barely, running on pigeons and things. Now we have, all of these social media spaces, and has blogging been eclipsed by people creating and communicating in more of an instantaneous space. I know how a lot of people here will respond, and to me, I would say you're not choosing either or. It's kind of an unnecessary choice to have to make. But the thing is, all those things where everybody is, everybody's in Facebook, is that the stuff you have in Facebook could be yanked out on you at any moment. Ask anybody who poured their work into a Posterous blog. And these external services, they will not last. I guarantee you, they will not last. And that's why I'm fully on board with Reverend Jim and the people who really suggest the importance of ultimately establishing your own home, the place that you do the primary locus of your work, and then do have this periphery of other places where you do your work. But to me, my first home, the first place I want to put my stuff is on the domain and a place that I can control. For people starting out, they may not be ready for doing a domain of their own. And although Jim has made it like one click easy, and it's a good thing, you can start off on a WordPress.com or a Blogger or a Tumblr, and get your feet wet and get some sense of the experience. And then later on, you can sort of, when you say, I'm ready to sort of make this my own, you can bring it back. But I just don't trust, and it's not necessarily like thinking that everybody is out to sort of just steal our stuff. But the thing about the social media space, Jeffrey, is that stuff, Mike Caulfield really frames this nicely. He calls it stream mode. It's all in the moment, and everything just poof goes down and disappears on you. And the power of the blog, as Jim and others have said, is like having this place where you can go back and you can arrange your past in ways that make sense to you. But I can tell you what I was thinking about or working on almost on any date going back to 2002, and I will never get that from Twitter or from Facebook. And if I do, it'll take a lot of work. I think Laura was going to jump in with something on social media.
Oh, I was going to start talking about control. That's where I was going to go with it. But I guess I'll have to make up something new. I guess I would say that for me, the thing about blogging that I really like that's so different from any sort of social media is that it provides a platform for me, that I can control. That's the first thing. But the second thing is also for longer form thought. I think that while I'm not a Facebook member, I know I'm probably like the last person on the planet that doesn't have a Facebook account, but with microblogging sites and even with commenting on other people's blogs, there's always some sort of limit. Whereas if you control your own space, you can go as deep as you want and be as complicated as you want and post as much as you want without losing followers. Because if you're doing it for yourself, then you don't really have to worry about your audience. I mean, we had this discussion a few minutes ago, and one of the things that I wanted to interject when we were talking about audiences is this idea that if you're writing for yourself and you don't care about the audience, then what you're doing is you're creating an archive of your work. And I think that, we keep saying it over and over, looking back and being able to trace your process from one idea to a product or, whatever, a paper, whatever it is that you're making out there in the world. Being able to trace that process is really interesting to reflect on later in life for you, but it's also really, really interesting for people who are finding your blog later, because they might be working on a similar problem, or they might need a similar process, and they can gain inspiration from what you've done. And if you're only sticking to the immediacy of social media, then you're sort of losing that ability to really go in deep with your own work.
I think just to defend a tiny little bit about closed spaces, I think that there needs to be, and again, people figuring this out for themselves, is sometimes, particularly when you're writing about really sensitive topics, really controversial topics. We've talked about the generosity of comments, but we haven't really talked about trolls, which is always one of the dangers, the very real dangers of thinking out loud, thinking publicly, particularly around controversial issues. I got, people will come find you on Twitter. They will come find your blog because they will find search terms that make them angry, and then they will take that out on you. And so there is, I've been noticing that more and more people are starting to migrate back towards Facebook in some ways to create, yes, it's proprietary, yes, they own it, but until there's kind of a better solution, it's where their people are, right? The people that they really want to connect with, to be able to work through some of the ideas in a safer space before kind of going more public with it and in a more protected space in that sort of way. So there are things where I can totally understand, having seen some abuse that colleagues and friends of mine have taken on their blogs, on their Twitter feeds, in these more open spaces, that I don't blame them for pulling back and saying, you know what, I'm only going to talk about this here with people that I invite, whom I trust, before going completely public with it. And that also sort of builds that community where when it does go public, you have that sort of support mechanism that's there. So I think we can balance that too in that sort of way, or at least think about that and consider it.
Right.
Can I just say a very quick comment on that? Is that between your own blog and publishing publicly outside your own blog, there's a difference between how much control you have over comments. And I recently published something on Prof Hacker, and I got a very weird, not exactly aggressive comment, but a little passive-aggressive. And I think I would have probably accepted that onto my blog too, but I just realized that when it's not my own space, it's as public, but at least on your own space, you have a bit more leeway over what you allow onto it and what you don't allow onto it. Especially for women, I think. Like, I know Audrey has hers closed off altogether. She doesn't allow comments on her blog. So.
I was just about to say that.
No, I just want to add, for beginners, particularly if you're setting up your own WordPress blog, which we recommend, because it gives you not only the ability to have a voice, but some competence in being your own publisher, taking control of the way you're presented online. Part of that is that it's very easy to moderate comments. You can make the trolls invisible. Their comments might show up in your private moderating queue. You don't have to do anything more than delete them. They'll never show up. So if you have a fear that if you're going to blog and you're going to get a bunch of trolls ruining things, really there's just a simple technical solution to that if you set up a WordPress blog and just check your moderation queue. It's very useful. Trolls do not like to hang out where there are any barriers.
That's a good point. On the other hand, if you are subject to a barrage of that kind of vile stuff, even though you can control it, I've not had that experience myself, very minor, but for the way Audrey and some other colleagues have described it, it just has to be tiring to have to deal with it, and it's got to be a question of why am I even bothering with this? And it's kind of sad in a way, but it's what the openness of the internet provides. You have to sort of allow the fact that people are going to use it in this other way, because you can't have one without the other. And so you can't have protection against this. And the best things that we can do are try to be vigilant about identifying and not putting up with that kind of bad behavior as well as what we model. I'm going to pull out my wrench here. Because we haven't even done what I thought we were going to do, which is even better because we've had some great discussion. But I do want to just, in the last 5 minutes, do a little bit of screen share over onto the site, and we're going to get probably a little bit of crazy inceptionness. Just hang on a second as I try to get my correct bit of tool here right now. Okay, so that might work. Oh, perfect. So over onto the DML Commons site. For those who haven't done yet, there's a link under Connect Blog for getting started, set up. So if you're at the point of trying to figure out which blog do I use, what do I have to think about, this page is something that we set up, and we went over this a little bit last week about choosing your blog and some things to think about, such as getting a good name. And then we have, of course, the form where you actually go. And what this is going to do is going to collect some information from you so we can put it into this thing that we call an aggregator. And we're doing this because we want to be able to do things like this. So we're able to, for people who have elected the professional pathways chain, these are going to be the newest blog posts that have come in for the professional pathways. And there's something similar for the design one as well. So you can actually see all the latest stuff that came in at a time. And actually, if you just go to flow/blogs, this will be sort of like the most recent blog posts that have come into DML comments. What's going to happen very quick, hopefully, is because when I go into list of all blogs, right now we have 24 blogs that have been added. We're just getting started, and these represent things from people doing WordPress. There's a couple people, I thought we might talk about this, who are using Medium. There's Blogger, people using Tumblr. And so you can see the links to people's blogs, as well as you can click on their @name, and this will show you just the syndicated post that person has written. What gets really, hello Mundo, is complicated is that there's a lot of content coming in, and the way you can't really do it realistically is just like casually scan, the newest stuff and find things. You could do that. So I will write something up. There is this way of sort of managing the flow that involves setting up an RSS reader so you can quickly scan and get a sense about the activity that's happening on the blogs, because it does get to be a little bit of an overload. But my favorite thing is, like, if you're looking for a blog that you want to comment on, you don't know where to go, there's a URL /random, and that's just going to go to a randomly selected post. If you like spinning the wheel and finding a blog, so here's one for Mia Zamora, Taking a Leap of Faith. So this is one of our syndicated posts. And Mia, of course, has been involved us in connected courses before. She writes some really good stuff here on her DML Central site. Just like spend some time not only thinking about what you're going to write, looking at what other people are writing. The question about what kind of things to respond to could be picking your response from a stepping stone of what someone else has blogged before. So that could be sort of a thing that you may want to write about. So again, we didn't even get to talk about the things like giving people blogs their help once over, and that's fine. We have the forum set up on the site where I will spend time. There's a forum just for the Blog Talk Garage. I'm thinking about setting up some weekly open office hangouts. So if someone wants to say, hey, can you take a look at my blog, or what do you think about this, or can you show me how to do X? And pretty much I will schedule some times where I'll just be on hand. And if people drop in, I will show them some stuff. If people don't drop in, I will show pictures of dogs or something like that. So Jim had to go, and Howard's still here, and I think we lost Maha. But any closing words from blog brother and sisters?
I would just say thanks for having me, and if anybody out there is looking for help on their blogs, you can always hit me up on Twitter, because I love to teach the web.
Big thumbs up for that.
I would say the same thing. Just I love writing online, and it's really fundamentally changed, like literally changed my life, in that I blogged and tweeted my way into an entirely new career. So you'll never have a bigger evangelist than me, possibly, but I believe in paying it forward, and my way to pay it forward is to introduce this and help. And just help people find audiences. I mean, that's one of the things I'm really good at, is connecting people to the right audiences, and finding readership, and just encouraging and supporting in that kind of way. So my Twitter handle's up on the screen. Just come find me. I'm ready writing, and I'll engage.
Awesome.
Each one teach one.
And with that, I think someone's supposed to close us out. I think Jameson will hand